Many people talk about the ups and downs of married life, but no one really prepares you for life after your spouse passes away. Welcome to Widowhood Real Talk with Tina, a safe place for widows, widowers, and their friends and family to talk about love and loss. Find comfort as you listen to honest conversations between Tina and invited guests who've experienced the loss of their forever partner. Share their stories of love, grief, and healing. You are not alone in this journey. Join today's episode and discover a wealth of resources and learn how to connect with others who are traveling the same path. This is Widowhood Real Talk with Tina.
Hello, Widowhood. Our guest today is Laura Cross, an Air Force veteran and dynamic owner of White Sands Premier Travel. With unwavering dedication to promotional self-care and personal growth, she founded White Sands Self-Care and serves as the dedicated host of the popular TV show Mindful Mondays with Laura Cross. Laura's dedication lies in creating vibrant self-care community that offers invaluable education, resources, connections, and opportunities for collaboration. At the helm of the White Sands Self Care Community Group on Facebook, she empowers individuals to lead their best lives. Let's get into this conversation now. Laura, welcome to the Widowhood.
Thank you.
People say thank you, but what do you really think when you hear welcome to the Widowhood?
Uh, I appreciate the opportunity of being able to be here and share my story or my experience and stuff with people.
Okay.
So,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you. And what of your experience made this seem like a good match for you? When you heard about this conversation, Widowhood Real Talk with Tina.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of us that go through it and experience it, and it's not always an easy challenge. I think everybody thinks that, you get a lot of those people that think that, oh, you should just snap out of it or get over it, or other people think, that you take too long. I think it's a conversation that we don't normally talk about. It's something we keep to ourselves, but I think it's something that we should talk about because I am sure there are others out there that are struggling and trying to get on with their life, or however however you want to put it, reinvent your life, start over. For me, it was like I felt like I was kind of almost starting all over, but so
That is very true. And I like that there were different terms. People get really hung up on it's not moving on, it's moving forward. It's not getting on with my life, it's continuing living. Just as this grief journey is unique, the way we articulate it for ourselves is a unique experience. I have one widow, Andrea, she says, grief is similar and grief is different. And I believe that's so true. Every time I have a conversation with someone, their spouse may have transitioned from this world. They may say transition, died, passed away. At the end of the road, they are no longer here, and you are trying to continue to live. I feel like sometimes people get too wrapped up and argumentative about a word that means really the same thing, and we're trying to get to the same place. So I love that you kind of had different versions of that. Would you share your late husband's name with us?
yeah, it was Randy Cross, and yeah, I think it all comes down to your beliefs, your background, cultures. I have found being more open-minded and listening to other people's perspectives. Sometimes you think about it, it gives you another way to look at things than the way I may have looked at it originally.
I totally agree with you. My perspective of life changed so much when my husband passed. For me, I guess it was a combination of right, life really is short. We say this statement, but when someone close to you passes, the fragileness of life becomes very real. And you realize how much you believe and how much you really don't know what happens. But what I have come to terms with, how I show up now, the spaces I'm given with people are important. And if I don't take what I know and do well with that, what am I really doing with the life I've been given?
Yeah, and it took me a lot of years, but I was the same as you, with the whole thought process. That's my whole thing is life's too short to be doing this. And one of those things was like when I was working for someone and of course because of what I have gotten paid, I realized I didn't have to go work and answer to somebody, but I used to be that person that would, like, always be there no matter what snowstorm, no matter what.
Mm,
They were the ones that I could count on. Well, after he died, it was like, yeah, no, I'm not risking my life to go in. 10,000,000 other people don't show up. I'm not showing up, you know? You start kind of putting value on different things and realizing that what you've been doing, although it may be admirable, it's not always, not always necessary. There's other things that are more important.
you bring up a really good point, Laura. The perspective of work, what we value, what we spend our time with. And you said it took you some time to get there. When did your husband transition from this world, and what was your journey like getting to the place of understanding that for you?
So that would be December 21st of 2004, approximately 10 p.m. at night. Yeah, we were laughing at lunch. He was dead by 10 that night at 36 years old. So it was,
36.
yeah, 36. I had just turned 37, and my Samoyed, we had 3 dogs. Those were our kids. My Samoyed, I had to put to sleep 2 days after my birthday. 2 weeks later, my husband dies. The
Mm,
following year, I have to put down my quiche. Within 14 months, I had been to 4 hospitals, 3 funerals, and I had had enough. I had just
right.
absolutely had enough. So, yeah.
From 2004. Wow, thank you for sharing that. And I know sharing our journey may be
Mhm.
something we say in rote, but there's a part of it that just takes you back for a moment and we think of those things. It's wonderful when people are empowered to share their journey, but I know sharing that comes at a cost. So I don't want to gloss over that and not remember the years, the love, and everything that you experienced and have all of those things together is a weight. How did you work
Yeah.
through that grief?
Well, at first I took their 7 days bereavement, which, well, yeah, you can keep that because that didn't work for me.
You barely had the funeral planned in 7 days, like, what is that?
Yeah, we had, people coming in from out of town. I had the 7 days bereavement. I went back. I was working nights because we were already told that we got paid 36% under in the Air Force to what it took to live in Colorado Springs. So I was already working night shifts to make ends meet. And most people, doctors will tell you, or anybody will tell you that's not normal. It's not good for the body to be working nights as it is on top of dealing with that. So I think I was back to work. I don't remember, maybe a week, 2 tops, maybe. And it was just so quiet. And some people would politely ask because I worked overnights. And then when I'm driving home in the morning, I was so exhausted from emotion. Emotion drains me out I'm an empathic person, so emotions really drain me. And I've actually wound up kind of falling asleep twice driving home
Ooh,
where I would have crossed over the line, but I woke up and pulled it back and I was like, whoa. So I went to go see a doctor or whatever, and I found out from one of the ladies in human resources that I could actually take short-term disability and go out on short-term leave.
now were
So
you in the Air Force at that time, or what type of work
no,
were you
I
doing?
separated after my husband and I got married, so I was working in a company up in Monument, Colorado that makes the taps, pins, screws, wires, everything that puts people and animals back together after they've broke bones and stuff. So
Okay.
I was in a manufacturing, basically kind of a plant.
Well, thank
And
you for your service. I was in the Army. I
yeah,
have to recognize our Air Force. We are all military because we are the minority, the people that have served this country in the capacity of enlisting in the military, and that is what a true patriot looks like to me, so thank you
yeah.
for your service.
Thank you, and thank you for yours as well.
Thank you. And so you go back to work in 7 days, and I see relax, and I see the pictures of the dolphins and the butterflies. What was the transition from you from this deep grief, complicated, layered, to get to these places in your mind?
So I went from angry. I had people telling me that, "Oh, there's a reason for this," or there was no reason for this. I didn't like having people's beliefs shoved down me. It was something that I had to deal with myself, and it took a lot of years. It took over 16 years. I mean, I slowly dealt with it. I sunk myself into watching like CSI or Boston Legal, something that occupied my mind until I could
Yes.
just like pass out and go to sleep. And I always looked at it as he went TDY. And if you're not military, that's a temporary duty assignment. I knew he wasn't coming back this time. I went through having the wild, upsetting dreams, and that would go on sometimes for a while, and then it got farther apart once a year. But it wasn't until really like in 2020, like 16 years later, when I started working with people that were in the holistic health and wellness space. I started working with business coaches, and we brought things up, and of course, there comes up the emotions, here comes the tears, and it's like, okay, well, we can do this or we can do that. And what I got out of that conversation was I did realize at this point now that had my husband not passed away, I would not be on the path that I am now. I wouldn't be living to what I feel is my true purpose and what truly makes me happy. I'd still be working one job or another to make ends meet. And not that I wasn't happy to do that, because we had a wonderful marriage. A lot of it was like, two ships passing in the night, because if he wasn't TDY somewhere, then, we're working opposite shifts to make ends meet. So we were in one rat race or another, but I was always working a job, just doing whatever I had to make ends meet. Now I get to do what I love doing, or what I've figured out that I love doing. And I'm much more relaxed and happy. I like to be able to connect with people, and I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a solopreneur. So I work on my own schedule. I don't work on anybody else's schedule anymore.
Wow, you said a lot there. I'd like to circle back to some of that if you don't mind.
No, go ahead.
I am so grateful for your transparency to talk about a 16-year journey, because so many times people want to make assumptions that after a year, you're kind of just moving on with life, or you've gone through all the cycles of things. This grief is a life journey. That transition that happened for you in that 16 years was hard.
Mhm.
And then to hear you say you are now fulfilling your purpose. And this just came to me. Maybe there was some truth in what people say, there's purpose for our loved ones passing. It's just it's immature to say it at that point in time. What would you think of that statement?
And I could see that. I've never been a very religious person. I have no problem with people that have it. I think we need to do what makes us happy, and we have to have something that we believe in. And when people came at me like that, or trying to, I went into full defense mode. And I actually had a person, and I've never wanted to reach out and slap someone so bad in my life, but I had someone look at me and say, I know exactly what you're going through. I got divorced. I'm sorry. They're still alive. You can still talk to them. You're trying to tell me that you understand. See, that's another word I try not to use anymore, because we all throw that word around, understand. My mom, we lost my dad here now in 2023. So my mom has now lost her husband. I
Mm,
can relate to some things she's going to go through, and some of the ups and downs that's going to hit her, and it's going to hit her out of the blue. But I cannot say I understand. Their relationship was different. My mom is a different person and a different personality. So to try and sit there and tell someone you understand, I don't know why we throw that word out there all the time, because you really don't. If you're not in that person's, if you're not that person, you really can't understand what they're feeling or what they're going through.
I agree with you, because I don't tell another widow that I understand how you feel. And for the exact same reasons that you mentioned. My uniqueness as an individual, my husband's uniqueness as an individual created our unique marriage.
Mhm.
And the nuances of that, only the two of us can understand. I would dare say if I had transitioned and my husband was left here, he would feel different than I felt in that grief. So how could I dare tell someone else I understand? I can sympathize, I can empathize, I can relate, and I can share my journey. And I'm sure just as we've in this very short period of time have been able to identify some similarities and
Mhm.
differences.
Right.
And I think the ability to respect that is what's really important, and not try to give these one line nuances for people that do not provide much help.
No.
As you look back over your experience and other people you've come across, what are some things that people could do that would be helpful for someone that is grieving?
For me, I would say some things that you can do is sometimes know that it's okay to be quiet. You don't have to fix them. You don't have to try to fix them. Sometimes they just need someone to be there with them, not even necessarily talking. or sometimes they may just need someone to listen to them without judgment, which I know is tough, especially when it comes to family members, because my family knocked themselves out to be there with me, and I love them for it, but it's one of the reasons why I actually kind of embraced the idea of going to talk to a psychiatrist, just because it was someone that didn't know me from anyone else. It didn't have that preconceived notion that, oh, well, you're going to do, no, I mean, to be honest, now that where I'm at now, I realize I wasn't being true to myself or know truly who I was at that time. So how can somebody else know? And especially with parents or family members, they have preconceived notions of you because of whatever you've gone through in your childhood and stuff. Doesn't mean things hasn't changed, for me as an adult. And like I said, I love them dearly because they were very worried about me, and they always made sure. It was 4 days before Christmas, and it ruined Christmas for me for a long time. But they came and picked me up. They drove me so I wasn't driving in an emotional state so that I wouldn't get in an accident. Made sure they were there with me all the time. And the thing is, too, that they don't think of is when they're on the phone sitting there saying, yeah, well, I'm here. Okay, yep, I'll see you later. Love you. I don't have anyone to say, hey, love you on the other end of the phone anymore. So as much as they were trying to help, it was still kind of a constant reminder. And at times they would start to get a little frustrated because they are knocking themselves out to help bring you up, but I wasn't there yet. And it gets frustrating, it was frustrating for them.
Thank you for explaining that. And it takes time. And it is frustrating for us to see people we love hurting
Yeah.
and trying to bring them up and understanding this is not fixable. The idea there is so much power in being silent and being present and validating someone's feelings and not making it weird and just letting it be what it is. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and
You
we're not the only one it affects. It does affect
yes.
your friends and your family around you. It took a year after being on antidepressants, and I didn't take them anymore, for me to realize that I was not ready to curl up and die. And the New Year's Eve 1 year after my husband died was when I had met my fiancé. And so, we started dating. He moved in with me by July. Well, then that kind of created a whole new problems because all of a sudden now well, we're not ready for Randy to be replaced. He's not being replaced. On one hand, you wanted me to keep going on and keep moving. I wasn't supposed to just curl up and die. But now that I'm here, now it's like reality. And now everybody's like, oh my God, and then there's just so many transitions, so many things to go through that you probably don't necessarily even think of. But there's lots of things that came up.
I can relate to that idea of there's so much to consider. There are pieces for me 8 years later that I am still unraveling Mark's passing. And I would dare say for you, there's still pieces of your husband's transition leaving this world that still comes up in different ways. It's like, I thought we had considered everything possible, but yet something else can surprise you. I want to talk
Yeah.
about the idea people saying we are not ready for Randy to be replaced. The people that were not his spouse, the people
No,
did not,
it was my family. It was my
the
family.
people that were not married to him,
Mhm.
the people did not carry this weight of a spouse that is gone from the outside, having, I'm going to say, the audacity to say the things that we are personally trying to relate with, to think that it's replaceable. Our late spouses are not replaceable. That is not the concept in our mind. At least it's not for me. And when I talk to people, nor is it the solvent to our grief.
Right.
And I don't understand why they don't comprehend that.
I think I didn't necessarily, look at it that way because, like I said, he wasn't being replaced. I had to restart and start a new life. This was a second life. I think, especially when you get difficult topics like that, and if you're a person that is not used to expressing your true feelings or your emotions, you really don't know the words to put to it. So, looking back at it, I would say it's not that they weren't ready to be replaced. they threw themselves, and my grandma had passed away 2.5 months after my husband did.
A lot.
My mom and my dad had been taking care of her and even turned the front room of their house into a hospice. So when you're burying all that, my mom never had time to grieve for my husband really because she was worried about me and keeping me up and going. Then they had to take care of grandma and then they had to deal with that. And so it's when you don't give yourself time to grieve, I think that's where that comes from. It's not being replaced. In other words, they just weren't ready for this because they haven't had time to deal with their own grief and the whole idea of it because it's kind of like what we do every day. We throw ourselves into work. We keep going. And instead of facing it or dealing with it, and that can cause you health problems and all kinds of other problems. But when you pack that stuff down and you don't let it out and deal with it, it hangs around a lot longer.
I like that perspective because I'll say from my perspective, being the widow, I was dealing with my husband's death every second, every moment, every day. The not dealing with it was not an option for me. So
Right.
that process of getting to a place that I was willing to open my heart to someone else, the amount of work that had taken place internally for me to get to that was massive. But I could see from that statement that other people from the outside may have not had to do the amount of direct work to continue living, so that changed. I'm fortunate that majority of my family and friends were extremely supportive and happy that I was continuing to live and what that looked like. You talked about how health is impacted by grief. What does that look like from your perspective and things you've learned?
Well, there's a lot of things that can come up, and there's a lot that I've learned recently, especially the more I've learned about holistic health and the things that you can do. But, not everything is fixable, with drugs or going to the doctors. Those are just Band-Aid fixes. There's things that are off in us. So when you're burying down traumas and you're not dealing with them, it actually shows up in pain in different ways in your body. It can show up as disease or dysfunction because it actually is it affects the whole person when we don't release that. And so, like really blocked emotions can cause like a bunch of constant headaches, different things. I have had chest pains before come up when I'm like bottling things up but don't let up. I can actually feel myself getting upset and I could actually feel chest pains and I would know to just take a few deep breaths and, you have to work through it. But it really does have an impact on your health when you don't face things and deal with them.
And that's just a brief synopsis. In your, talk show that you have on television, what are some things that people could expect to hear from and how that would benefit them from tuning in?
Yeah, the Mindful Mondays with Laura Cross. I created that because of my experience, that I had. I want people to know that they're not alone. There is someone else probably out there that has gone through something similar and can relate. And maybe they have some methods or different techniques because there's so many different modalities and stuff out there that can help
Yeah.
you. So I love when I have people on that can share their story, share how they got past their challenges and how they help other people to get past those same challenges. I've had people on that grew up in evangelistic and a very abusive household, but it really damaged their self-confidence, their self-worth. But they got through that and now they're shining through as the professional and the entrepreneur. I mean, they've gone through paths. I've had other veterans on that were like 5-time suicide attempt, survivors and how they've gotten past. Sometimes it's has to do with physical fitness. It can have to do with business. It is all realms. Mindfulness and self-care is all realms of life. Because
Wow.
we always like to say work is work and home, is home. But really, if something is off in one area, it's affecting it's affecting the other parts of your life. You really don't just shut it off. It may show through an attitude, expression, whatever, and you may not even be aware of it. So,
Mm.
yeah, I have all different realms. I've had intuitives, just and I love when I get the intuitives on there because they have such a unique perspective, and there's some of those that just make me think. I was like, you know what? Okay, I could see that. That's something. I love getting the different perspectives. It's a judgment-free space, and I love having all the different perspectives on there.
Thank you. You mentioned the word intuitive. Could you elaborate on what that means for someone that's just hearing that word for the first time?
I'm not sure if I'm the best to define it. I have We all have intuition. We actually we're born with it. We all have it. Some of us have buried it or don't listen to it or don't know how to listen to it. It's
Okay.
kind of like, your hair stands up on your arm or something. You don't know why. It's because your intuition, you have an intuition about stuff.
Okay.
And so people can sense or they can feel things. Other people are very in tune to it, where I can be talking to them. They could be in a totally different country, and they can either just tell by my vibration, my energy. You just have. I'm probably not going to explain this right, but it's like this aura. When you have people telling you the same thing from different countries,
Okay.
there's something to that. It has to do with the vibrations, the frequencies. It has to do with your intuition, being in tune. It can go into the clairs. Some people are clairvoyant, clairaudient. It just depends. There's so many different things. I'm still learning more and more about that world, but it's really pretty fascinating, and it actually makes sense when you can, get them on there and they can explain.
Thank you for sharing that. And speaking of explaining, can you tell us what was going on with the picture and the dolphin there to your behind you?
Okay. So, funny story. So there's another thing. Well, and animals have their own spirits and stuff too. We're actually drawn to like certain animals. For me, it's dolphins and bears. I
Okay.
have been drawn to dolphins since I was a kid. Was never really sure why, but I always loved the water. And people have known that when they see me, they tell me you're a water person. They like to see it about me. So there's something about it that can tell them that.
You like
Um,
blue too, so that's part of
well, Air Force blue, Caribbean blue,
there
so
we
I have
go.
my blues.
Yes.
I have my blues going, but purple is one of my favorite colors as well. So when I was a kid, I didn't know how to pick sports teams. My dad just said you had a team that you root for. So Miami Dolphins, because they had a dolphin, that was my team. No, I have never lived there. I have visited there now, but I've never lived there. We'd go to SeaWorld as a kid, and as much as I wanted to feed them, I was never able to because I didn't want to touch the slimy or smelly fish. And I was afraid they'd be all slimy. We finally got to go to Atlantis with my parents, in 2017, and that is Electra. She was a dolphin that was rescued from Katrina that was down
Mhm.
there, and I decided I was gonna do this experience one way or another. I've learned from other things about fear, you face them, you just push through and let's go do this, and my mom said she's already done the shallow experience. If we did this, we're gonna do the deep water swim. So I said, "Well, okay, let's go." I threw on the wetsuit and we went in there, and oh my god, I absolutely loved it. They're like a soft leather coat. It was the coolest experience. I would anywhere I go that has a dolphin experience, I'll tell you, I will sign up and go do that because just being in the water with them and, they come right up, they give you a kiss, they come by so you can pet them. Lay down, you put your feet, they take the nose, they propel you out. You put your feet down, you smack the water, she comes back and you grab her top fin and she pulls you back in. I mean, it was an amazing experience, and it's one that I got to experience with my mom. So, it was a lot of fun,
Thank you
but
for
yeah.
sharing that. And the butterfly.
That is yeah, well, butterflies always represent new beginnings, and that is something that a lady did for me in Denver. I actually won that, and it said peace on it and had all the blues, and I just was attracted to it because the blues and the purple, and it had butterflies, so yep, so I put that up there too.
Nice. Thank you. Laura, if you were to speak to yourself shortly after Randy passed away, what would you tell yourself now? Knowing what you know on this side of the journey, what would you tell Laura?
That it wasn't the end, it's just the beginning.
Mm,
And that everything is gonna be okay.
that is something to hold on to.
Yeah, it was not something I felt like at that time.
Nor does anyone.
Mm-mm.
But
Nope.
I believe it's important for our sisters and brothers, widows and widowers that may have lost a loved one. They may be listening to this podcast and their spouse may have just passed months ago. And to hear someone that may have struggled for 16 years and to be able to tell themselves it was the beginning. You forged through so much to be in the space that you are now. So those words have value. Thank
Yeah.
you for sharing that. You mentioned 16 years later, you found coaches and business people to work with. What was that transformation like for you?
Well, I had done other, business and stuff. I always just kinda kept plugging away. That's just kinda what I was always taught to do. So, yeah, when I say challenges, it's like, oh, so if I could share with you, it is something kind of ironic, and it depends on how, and
Please
everybody has a
do.
different view on it. So
This is your story and your journey. You get to share. This is yours.
so I met my late husband on New Year's Eve in Luke Air Force Base. I met my fiance on New Year's Eve a year after he passed. They are both 5'10". They are both heavy metal headbangers. They have about the same comic book collection, the exact same music collection. They will describe the same definition between how rock and classical go together. Now they do have some differences. They both graduated from North Dakota, one in Underwood, one in one in Bisbee. So I've had other people tell me that Randy sent him to me,
Hmm.
and I said, okay. I mean, that's an interesting perspective, but I could see that. But I mean, other people say, well, you have a type apparently. Well, okay, but so that was kind of some of the challenges, because I still had some of the stuff, but he's the exact same build too.
Hmm.
And so some of the clothes fit, and then as time goes on, we start doing stuff, and then it's I don't know if it's like struggling to remember, or when you're creating new ones, but then there was times where it gets to be, and it's like, okay, I'm sorry. Was that with him or was that with you? Because now their memories are starting to like kind of
Plan.
blur. And when they're so similar, it was getting tough sometimes to say, okay, all right, wait a minute, did I do that with him or was that what you and I? It's just like, because, I was married for 14 years and 3 months. And now Dakota and I have been together for over 18 years. So yeah, there gets to be kind of those blurry lines. So those were some of the challenges. And I started businesses and I did stuff, but there was other things within myself that I was struggling with, because I was always used to just following someone else's lead, doing what I had to, give me a direction and you go. It wasn't until I had joined that group in 2020 and started working with like other business coaches and stuff that I started to learn how to work more as an entrepreneur and start learning more about different things that I could do and the different light that people was seeing me in. And then we moved from Colorado to Missouri in 2022. And I really moved because I didn't want to lose everything again. We didn't like the way Colorado was headed. It was wearing my fiance into the ground. It's like, I've already lost everything once. I'm not doing this again. So we moved. But when I got here, I realized how much I needed the change. My family's all in Colorado. I love them dearly. But when you're not happy with the environment, I couldn't stay just because my family was there.
Hmm.
And so we went, and the more I've gotten to do this and meet with more people, the more I figured I've just had some more. I've had quiet time. I've been able to kind of figure out what really lights me up and resonates with me, and not doing what I'm supposed to do, and following certain paths. So I've found my own path. It's taken time. It's taken a lot of time.
You are that butterfly.
Mm,
You literally have, I don't want to say recreated yourself, but matured yourself, come into your own. And I think that is one of the biggest struggles when you lose your spouse, your identity, who you saw yourself with that person and who you saw yourself to be has to change because they are no longer here. So we cannot be the
right.
person we were with them. And we have to choose. I think you said at some, you had to decide you needed to move forward. You couldn't stay there any longer. If you were speaking to someone who had recently lost their spouse and they felt like they were stuck and they didn't want to go on, is there something you would share with them?
I would tell them to just give it time. I know it looks bad. And it feels devastating. I had those moments. I had moments where I wouldn't have cared had I crashed the car. But I had 2 pups because we had 3 dogs. Those were our kids. And at the time I still had 2 dogs. Those are my kids. And for me, no one could take care of them the way I could. So for me, I had to keep going for them. But there's a lot of people there for you, and you leave really quite a hole, when you choose not to go forward. But yeah, I mean, it's kinda tough to say, because I can, if I go back there, yes, I remember how devastating, and I wasn't really sure how I was going to get through things. I just kinda kept going through one day at a time, and each day it would get a little bit different. You're always gonna have those challenges, like stepping into that restaurant, Red Robin, where we had lunch the last day when he died. I had to go back into there for the first time. It was a little weird. but it's just, it takes time. It really takes time. I don't wanna say it gets easier. It kinda does, but I'm not saying that there's nothing easy about it. I there's nothing easy about it, but I guess it's more digestible.
Mm,
You can cope with it better. I would say talk to other people, get different perspectives, and don't ever let anyone, tell you how you should feel or that you should be over this by now, or that is you. You have to figure out, what you need for you. No, people don't know necessarily what to say all the time when you're in pain. They just wanna try and fix you, and when we wanna try and fix people, because I used to try to fix a lot of people. Doesn't work. But, they just wanna fix you, and they just kinda don't know how. So we all wish we'd kinda have this magic wand, but
mm.
I think it just takes time, and if you can hear from different people and different experiences, because 'cause I've listened to different people, and when I can look at different perspectives, it might take a little bit, but I'll start thinking about it's like, "Okay, that's a different way to look at it," and maybe it helps you move a little farther, or maybe it helps you move a little further along.
Wow, thank you. If someone wanted to contact you, email you, or watch your show or your website, could you share that information, please?
Yeah, the TV show is at Mindful Mondays with Laura Cross. You can find it on YouTube is probably the easiest way to find it. Otherwise, it's also on e360tv.com 'cause it is a TV show. Whitesandselfcare.com is my website. You can always find me on Facebook or LinkedIn. Just put in Laura Cross White Sands. White Sands is with me for everything for White Sands Self Care, White Sands Travel, Premier Travel. I've got everything related to White Sands. So, or you can email me, whitesandselfcare@gmail.com.
Thank you. When we thought about having this conversation, is there anything that you thought we should cover that we didn't go over? Make sure we dive into that and give space for it.
Well, I mean, I'm always open. I'm always open to share. So, I mean, if anybody wants to know more details or more of things that I went through, I am always happy to share that. Like you said, yes, it can be painful. It can bring up memories, but got through it. And if it helps somebody else to get through it, then I'm happy to share. Cause like I said, I just want people to know that they're not alone. I think together that we can do more.
Yes.
And if you've got someone that is you just feel the negativity and stuff when they're around or doing that, just create space. You
Yeah.
have every right to that. Create the space from 'em, whether it's family or not. Sometimes you just have to create that space and give yourself time to heal. Some people get through it by throwing themselves back into work, and my hat's off to them. But it's just the more I've learned, my question is, have they really dealt with it though? Is it gonna show its head up in another way, like either in pain or sickness or something else at some point in time?
I
You don't
would
know,
dare say
everybody's
that.
different.
You mentioned healing. I want to talk about something we briefly discussed before the podcast.
Mhm.
If you could talk about the work that you're doing with sound and people's voice, and you and I can relate that grief can cause so many traumas to your health, and the ability to learn holistically how to deal with that. I would like for you to mention that because there may be someone listening that may want to connect with you for those services as they're trying to redefine themselves and find out, why am I aching? Why am I feeling this way? And I think that that could be very helpful.
Yeah, so it's something new. I had a recent partnership. I teamed up with, Doctor Grant and out of Canada, who's a biofeedback toxicologist who turned me on to this AO voice scan, and it's amazing because the stuff from Nikola Tesla, and the energy, everything's energy and vibration. People may not realize it, but your desk, colors, everything in this world has a vibration and a frequency to it.
Mm,
So what it does is it has the Nikola Tesla basically in this software. And I can do it. I do it for people with Zooms. I do it from we've got Germany, Netherlands, Italy. You do not have to be here with me. It just picks up your voice, your vibration, and so when you say I am in your first and last name and you talk, you are creating, you have thousands of vibrations and frequencies coming out. And this actually takes it down and it finds your three highest and your one lowest. And we're going to try and bring you back into balance because it means you're
okay.
out of balance. And it's amazing because in just 10 seconds of your voice, it captures this. It will show what foods are causing inflammation in your body. Are you pre diabetic? It'll show blood work. Do you have more bad LDL than HDL? It kicks out MRI-like, I will say MRI-like pictures, but it will actually show you pictures. It pointed a picture to my thing because I've been told I clench my teeth at night, and if I do clench them every now and then, I'll start to get a headache, and that thing's pointed right to my skull, right to where I clench my teeth. It knows I clench my teeth at night. It knows that I apparently showed that I was starting to have, like, a little bit of a leaky gut. And when it gets to the color therapy part, we always ask people what their favorite colors are because not everybody knows what their colors are. Colors have vibration. There is a reason that your spas are painted a certain color or restaurants are painted a certain color. They are designed to either make you relax or to make you want to eat or buy more. There's psychology behind that, and it's color therapy. So when we get to that color part, that's when it shows you emotions. It'll show your highest emotion, what you're swinging between, whether it's like love and unconditional love. You're somewhere in that pendulum, and it'll show you the possible emotions. And a lot of times, grief, anger, or anxiety does come up on people. And I'll tell people it could be something you're experiencing now, or it could be something that you think you're over. You've experienced it when you're younger, but it's trapped in your subconscious. Because
Mm,
when it is trapped in your subconscious, it still comes through in your vibration and in your voice.
wow, that's
So
amazing.
we can actually scan, and I always do that scan complimentary for the first time for anybody,
Okay.
so that it can give them a snapshot. They can see we can let them know, we can interpret it for them. It's up to them what they wanna do with it. We have natural supplements that we would recommend for people to be able to help fix some of those things, or sometimes it's just deep belly breathing. There's so many of us, 95% of us are walking around with hypoxia because we breathe in our chest.
Oh,
And
breath work.
oh, yeah, yeah.
So you've shared your email address, and if they
Mhm.
want more of that, they can follow up with you. I'd like to ask people
Absolutely.
if they have any questions of me. A lot of times you're sitting there on the defensive end answering all these questions, so I try to turn it around and see if by chance you have any questions of me.
Oh, I mean, I love what you're doing. What inspired you to do your widowhood real talk?
That is a good question, and I'm glad that I'm inspiring you. You're inspiring me, and
Yeah.
we really are on this journey together. I had a conversation, with a widow about the passing of her husband, and I go to bed super early when all possible, and this conversation had me up into the wee hours of the night, and I was okay to sacrifice that time because I knew what it looked like for me when I was in that place of so desperately needing to talk to someone else that had a glimpse of what I was going through, and they could relate to my struggle. And when I got off the phone with her, so sleepy, and it was my current husband's, relative, and I was just sitting there exhausted, and I could hear a guy saying, "What are you gonna do about the next person that comes to you that needs help?" And I was like, "No one is calling my phone this late. I am tired. I'm going to bed." And then I heard God say, "No, how is this conversation repeated? How do people know they're not alone?" And from that, this nonprofit, 501(c)(3) Widowhood Real Talk with Tina was birthed. And as I'm currently writing my own memoir now, I can see this nonprofit leverage my own grief journey in the 3 ways in which we help people. So we have 3 legs. One is social media, because oftentimes when we're grieving, we may not know how to articulate our feelings, but we are yearning to connect with other people or resources that do.
Right.
So our podcast that comes out every Thursday, content that we put out across 6 social media platforms, currently analytics of over 4 million views across 106 countries, tells us people are hurting and they're looking to connect. And so that one resource that we provide across social media in our podcast creates an opportunity for people to connect with us. And so that second way in which we support people is with resources. And those resources may be people that have written books, people needing to connect with a mental health professional, or things that can help them, recommendations. And so those resources are on our website. The third way in which we support people is with mental health events. such as the first weekend in August, we have an event called Walk for Love, where we ask people to walk 1 mile for 7 days and then put hashtag their loved one's name and hashtag walk for love, because the desire to say our loved one's name and people to embrace that is such a deep desire for people who are grieving. They
Right.
often don't have a place to say their loved one's name, and people go or look weird and do stuff. And also to exercise, to get outside, get some vitamin D, and realize that that energy from the sun is healing.
Mhm.
Some people may have to walk at home, but just getting that body moving again is part of healing and being good to yourself in this very difficult journey. We are conducting our first butterfly release ceremony for a memorial garden the first weekend in June here in Norfolk, Virginia.
Nice.
And with the analytics that we have and being a 501(c)(3), it allows businesses to come alongside of us to be sponsors. We have 5 different sponsorship program as low as $275 a year that gets you before our different, people in our community and allows us to mention you, or there are different sponsorship programs up to the top level where we would have a podcast dedicated to you, and then different places you're on our website to connect with our community. So the mental health events, we have an in-person event, Surviving the Winter Holiday, where people come together. We also have something called Preparing to Deal with Grief during the holidays, because
Oh, yeah.
see, right there, it's tricky.
Yeah.
And so we have mental health professionals that make themselves available. So, and I go back and look at my grief journey. When my husband passed, I reached out to community. I reached out to other widows. I read books. I leaned in, similar to what you were saying. I can't stay stuck here. I miss Mark terribly, but my life is still going. And I can see those 3 pillars represent the things that I went through in my own grief journey. And watching it help other people is amazing, because this was the most horrific experience in my life. This is where I thought I didn't know what I was going to do, and it was a daily, hourly, minute process that has gotten me to where I'm at. And if I can let someone else know they are not alone and encourage them and help them, then something of worth and value came out of my struggle.
Oh, yeah. You and me both. We're very similar. We're definitely very similar in those ways, and it is very, yeah, very minute. You never know what comes up, but, especially if you've been married for a long time before you lost them. There's, like, it seems like the simplest things, but it's like, I happen to be the one that take care of all the bills, and I used to write programs at one time, but he was a gamer, and then something would happen to the computer. I was, like, afraid to touch anything because I didn't know what I could uninstall or not install that would crash this, and, you know, when you let things go and someone else, your husband takes care of this and then you don't, or you gotta relearn those things.
Yes.
You gotta relearn those things, you gotta figure them out, and then, of course, that's always another reminder that, well, they used to always take care of that, you know?
Oh my gosh,
Um
Mark was a journeyman electrician. I didn't fix stuff, assemble furniture, or do anything. When we built our first house, there are pictures of him showing me how to wire in an electrical outlet, because we were young kids trying to save every penny to purchase that house. And I remember when he passed, I purchased this dresser that came with all these pieces, and I just cried. I was looking at all these pieces thinking, I can't do this. And I was like, I got the YouTube video. How do you assemble this? I had all the pieces out. And I'm thinking it's like 1 o'clock in the morning. I was not sleeping until that thing was assembled. I'm sending pictures to my siblings. And I know they're like, I mean, we put together furniture all the time, Tina, big deal. But I'm like, this is my first out here. And I felt so accomplished to go,
Mhm.
I can get these little wins and be excited about it.
Yep, I can do it. See, I was always a tomboy, and I was the aircraft electrician, so I used to put all that
Okay.
stuff together. The embarrassing part for my mother, because my mother taught us how to cook. I had all these cookbooks. My husband loved to cook,
Nice.
so he wanted to do all the cooking. I only baked and I did Thanksgiving dinner. He did all the rest of the cooking. So, yeah, after 14 years, my fiancé now became the guinea pig because I had to learn to cook again.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
Okay,
Life
I'm
changes.
relearning this.
Okay.
Yeah,
Lord,
I
this
made
is
him kind of a five-alarm spaghetti sauce because he said he liked things hot, and I just kinda dashed too much. He's like, "It took me, like, 5 batches to get it to calm down without it burning up his inside." I was like, "Sorry, I'll get the hang of this."
hey, eventually you get it, and it just shows that life changes
It
and our
does.
roles change in life. Lord, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for making time out of your busy day to have this conversation with me and my community. I will allow you to close this out with final words.
Oh, I was gonna say anytime, and thank you for providing, this platform. But, yeah, for anybody that's going through that, just take time to look inside yourself, and if you tap into what you're feeling, you know you can get through it, what you need to do. You may have to block out other people, it's always well-intentioned, but really it comes down to you and what you wanna do. You're stronger than you think, and you gotta give yourself some credit. Celebrate your wins. If you woke up breathing, celebrate it, you know? It's just that simple. Make sure you celebrate the wins and don't beat yourself up on every turn because 'cause we're really good at doing that.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you for being here.
Yep, thank you for having me.
Thank you for spending another episode with Widowhood Real Talk. If you found the contents of today helpful, share the episode to anyone you know who may need it. Subscribe to the show and tune into Widowhood Real Talk each week. Then visit widowhood-realtalkwithtina.org to join the community and access additional resources. Remember, you are not alone in this journey.